Hi everyone, my name's Tusky, and like so many of you, I am a massive fan of the Baldur's Gate series of games and subsequent RPGs inspired by them. I saw today that Larian Studios put up an AMA on Reddit, and I was hoping that maybe someone had pulled it apart and delivered a lot of the interesting content in a more bite-sized form, but they hadn't. So I thought, why don't we do that together? We can go do that right now. Before I do though, I will be covering a lot more of this on the lead up to early access. So give us a subscribe on YouTube if you can. I'd love to discuss more of this with you guys, see more of this community interaction with the regular updates we're going to be getting from Larian as well. And yeah, look forward to it. So let's jump right in here. So after the introduction here from Sven Venke, who is the creative director and founder, he actually started Larian Studios back in 1996, but that's content for another video. We have the first there's a lot of questions here. This is from Reddit username Thor Thunderfist, who has obviously been part of the community for a while and has done an amazing job of pulling together a lot of the really niggling questions that people had either after they heard that Larian was doing the remake of Baldur's Gate or upon seeing the trailer or gameplay. I myself had a lot of my own questions, and being such a fan of the original series, of course, there was going to be some possible grievances here without things being cleaned up. So I really liked that Larian went ahead and did this AMA. I'm not going to go into everything, of course. I'm going to take what I think is relevant to those coming from an area of knowing about Baldur's Gate and wanting to make sure that they're going to be doing it justice. So the first question I'll jump down to is number 9, and I'll read it out for you. There have been concerns that some aspects of the game, from what has been seen, feel too clean or feels too much like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, i.e. characters not having a certain air of grit or grime about them despite the circumstances, and does not fit the darker themes that have been part of the Baldur's Gate series. Do you plan on addressing this as you continue to work the overall aesthetics throughout early access and into release? I half agree with this. I understand the need to go back to some of those beautifully dark and gritty tile sets that we got to have going through the Baldur's Gate series. Obviously, the engine was quite rough around the edges, and with that kind of flat 2D isometric world, it's more like a book than it is a 3D interactive adventure, which Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 are. I love this question, and Sven comes back with, yes, we have actually an entire system in development for grit and grime that adapts to circumstance, but it's not ready yet. Bearing in mind, this man started Larian Studios back in 1996. He lived through the moments when Baldur's Gate was being developed, and I truly believe that he'll be able to realize the depth of emotion that is required for this game. Following on from this, jumping up to question 7, reads, there has been a back and forth over the inclusion of origin characters in Baldur's Gate 3. This is the characters that you can choose who have a pre-made story and a very set feel behind them, as opposed to clicking through, generating your character via the open generation system that we got in number 1 and 2, and giving it your own thoughts, feelings, and ideas and feel, so to speak. It continues here, namely how origin characters had much more interesting story plot beats than player-made characters in Divinity Original Sin 2. Do you have any plans in place to combat this and give player-made characters more agency and story beats in Baldur's Gate 3? Again, this is a really good question. I don't like the idea of reading through someone else's adventure. I want to make my character. We play D&D not to play other people's characters, but to play our characters. And we played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 to have our own character live through that story. Sven's come back on this one with a really, really nicely laid out answer. This is our campaign, but it's absolutely your adventure. The small amount of gameplay we've shown so far focused on one of our origin characters, but whether you roll a custom or origin character, the choices you make and the actions you take carry the same weight. In Baldur's Gate 3, origin characters are basically fully fledged companions that you can optionally play. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 had companions with intricate, unique backstories and quests, and our origin system allows us to give you the choice of getting even closer to those stories by role-playing as characters that also act as companions. It continues here to talk about how if you take on your own character, you create your own character separate from the origin characters, they actually are identified as Baldurians, citizens of Baldur's Gate in the game, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And given the importance of the city in the game, in its own way, Baldur's Gate is very much one of the game's protagonists or antagonists, depending on your perspective and how events unfold. Making it the player's home makes the place and the stakes you're fighting for feel very personal. So yes, they have brought in a way for them to tell multiple stories, adding to amazing replayability, I believe will be the name of the game there. But you'll also be able to create your own character and live through the events of what is essentially your hometown. It's your home. And it goes on to say here, it should be noted though that player characters from the Underdark or other places, Githyanki and Drow for example, have their own unique experiences and backstory in the world, as you'd expect. So if you want to roll a Drow and be spit on by everyone, I'm sure that's going to happen. And to pick one more question from Thor Thunderfist's post here, it says, finally, less specifically about what has been seen so far, what makes Baldur's Gate for you personally? What are its qualities that resonate with you? That's an amazing question because you could ask 10 different people and get 10 different answers, but the soul of it often stays the same. And this answer here, I think, is great. I replayed Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 when we started on this, and the same things that stood out back then still stand out today. The sense of being on an epic quest with a party of interesting companions, which I need to keep happy. The promise that there's something to be discovered everywhere I go. The sense that I'm someone special in this world and make a difference, and a lot of, oh, that's cool. I think I appreciate it even more now than I did back in the days. This is really great. I like the keeping happy part as someone who always wanted to try and include Viconia in every single one of my parties while also having the goody-goody two-shoes. Viconia and Aerie was so hard to juggle, and you often had to make a choice if you were going to end up going one way or other in the reputation chain. But this is a really, really great answer, and the dedication that obviously Sven brings to this, I think is second to none. So a lot of the other questions here being asked by the community via Thor Thunderfist's post here is in relation to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and how it's going to be implemented into the Baldur engine. The Baldur engine being the graphical engine built up from the Divinity Original Sin 2 engine. It is its own thing. It is being developed specifically for Baldur's Gate 3, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Yes, we will have reactions. You'll be able to choose what happens. For instance, wizards will be able to put up a spell shield as a reaction. They don't have grappling at the moment, but they have shoving, so extra attack will work like it does in 5th edition, though a bit less limiting. You currently can't actively ready an action, but you can select which one of your reactions can trigger during the enemy turn. Identifying is going to be in, and I did indeed mean magical items. That's fantastic. There's nothing greater than having picked up an amazing sword and not being able to identify it and trying to even and it not working, and you've just got this thing sitting there that you've got to go and try and work out what it is. You know, it's an adventure in its own right. The second question in line comes from Reddit username I will put my finger. Amazing name. Hi Sven, are there plans to make custom characters feel as unique as the origin ones? If so, what can you tell us about them? Sven doesn't answer this. It's actually Adam Smith, I believe, one of the senior writers on BG3. Comes back with custom characters are hugely important to us, and when you choose your class, race, and background, you'll already have made choices that have an impact throughout the game, both in terms of what you can do, how you're perceived, and what you know. But just as in tabletop, it's what you do after character creation and how you choose to roleplay that character that will make your adventure and character unique. In many ways, they're more unique because you made them. This is great. This is a senior writer building an amazing world, giving you great tools to use it with, and then going, here you go, there's the keys. You do what you want with it. We're not going to hold your hand. We're not going to be afraid to do things in front of you based on your own dumb decisions. I seem to remember you could kill Aerie in the tent from Walkeen's Promenade before she turns out of the ogre or whatever. You could just choose to fight her and kill her and lose hours and hours and hours of content from the story. But that's your choice. That's so cool. So looking at some of the more important things from the list, we have Kidslayer AI, who's asking, will Baldur's Gate 3 be moddable? If so, is it possible for modders to add in new locations, companions in the main storyline, or add in new UI? So they've turned around and said, we're focusing first on developing and finishing the main campaign. Once we have some space, we can talk about that. Knowing Larian to be a very open and honest game studio that doesn't have a massive corporate entity behind them, preaching microtransactions and loot boxes in their ear. I can see them doing this in the future. They, of course, have to adhere to many rules from Mike Mells and Wizards of the Coast, but hopefully this kind of engine will be opened up for people to be able to bring in their own artwork and bring in their own stories. So yeah, modding. I'd love to see that. I mean, I just love any kind of community interaction with this kind of stuff. Will all 5e classes be available at launch? Yes. All classes from the 5th edition Player's Handbook will be included at launch. In early access, you'll be able to play as Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Warlock, or Wizard. And that includes all paths and subclasses. That's great. They haven't gone through and cherry-picked things that people might want to play. They go, oh, we won't include this, we won't include that because it's not as useful or whatever. No, you want to play it, you find it in the Player's Handbook, you research it, you know about it from some of your games, you can play it. It will be there for you. This is going to be very comprehensive. So the penultimate question we'll look at is from Reddit user Serifian, asking, will there be any connection between the story of Baldur's Gate 1, 2, Throne of Ball, and Baldur's Gate 3? There's got to be, right? Well, this is Sven coming back with, we really don't want to spoil anything, but we wouldn't call it Baldur's Gate 3 if there wouldn't be a link. Let me just say that we will touch upon the story of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in meaningful ways. There are returning characters, and what happened in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Throne of Ball, leads to what happens into Baldur's Gate 3. So for those of you who don't know, Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be set roughly 100 years after the events of Baldur's Gate 2, to which the D&D module Descent into Avernus is a direct prequel to. So Baldur's Gate 2, Descent into Avernus 100 years later, followed directly by Baldur's Gate 3. If you wanted to get up to speed on what's happening in the area, the Descent into Avernus D&D module is only just an amazing story, but it has a gazetteer in there. It's got so much information. You can just go through and read about what's happened in the town, the upper city, the lower city, or like the Minsk statue that turned out to actually be Minsk, Minsk and Boo, of course. So I would thoroughly recommend getting into that book before early access comes out, just to get your head in the game. Mike Mells from Wizards of the Coast is kind of the timekeeper for the Forgotten Realms, and he has mentioned that the lack of a current year, an exact time, is a feature. It's not a bug. So it allows that sort of suspension of disbelief to happen. He does have a book of times that apparently Sven Venkir has seen little bits of and gone, oh, I've seen some secrets. But Mike holds that very close. He likes to be able to make sure the various properties for WATC are happening in the correct order. And obviously, Larian has a big part of that happening within their studios. And this is interesting considering Sven talking about meaningful ways of bringing the story into Baldur's Gate 3 from the original games. And what is this? Is it characters? Sure. But, a decent amount of time has passed. So you're guessing that a lot of the characters have passed on, or at least some of them have. So, perhaps Viconia is still kicking around. Maybe the gnome, Jan Jansen is probably still around. Gnomes live quite a long way with their Fey ancestry. And the final question that I'll include in this video is from Inner Consequences 3 on Reddit. Is there a date set for early access? The first response was from someone else saying, pretty sure the response is going to be when it's ready. And then David comes right back with when it's ready. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I really enjoyed going through this AMA with you all. If you want to see more of what comes from Larian, I will be covering all of the community updates and anything else that they happen to do with the community going forward, all the way up to early access. And then I will also be making videos during early access. So if you like what you see, give me a subscribe. I'd love to see you in the channel. Let me know something I may have missed there so I can help make the future videos maybe a little bit more friendly for you guys if I've missed something important, or if you feel like you learned something, let me know that too. Until then, my name's Tusky, and remember to thank your healer.